Check podcasts.
Welcome to the Rising Economy Podcast, where leading thinkers, changemakers, and newsmakers discuss current issues and bold ideas impacting the economy and people of Greater Victoria.
Welcome to the Rising Economy Podcast, brought to you by South Island Prosperity Partnership, Greater Victoria's regional economic development agency and host of the annual Rising Economy Conference. I'm Carrie Slavens, and I'll be your host for today's Rising Economy episode, Retail's Revolution, What It Means for Shoppers and Business Owners. We're podcasting today from Czech Studios, located on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen people, known today as the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. Well, today I'm very pleased to have Darlene Hollstein with me. Darlene is General Manager of the Bay Centre in Victoria, and she's been employed in commercial property management for more than 30 years. She's renowned and respected booster of Greater Victoria and has overseen many major local organizations, including the Downtown Victoria Business Association, the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and she's currently, I believe, chair of Destination Greater Victoria. She's one of the very best people I know to give this 360 view of what's happening in the retail sector. Darlene, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, to kick things off, before we dive into the general retail atmosphere out there, could you tell our readers a little bit about your background and how you became involved and then immersed in retail?
Oh, for sure. It's one of those things, like when you visit a shopping center, you just go there and are enthralled with the environment and like, how cool. I remember growing up, there was a big piece of land I'd drive by with my father, and I was like, I'm going to put a mall there one day. Why? I don't know. I love shopping, I guess. And then you kind of get into, working a store through school and stuff like that. And then off you go into your career. I was going into law, actually, is what I was going into. And then I sort of got headhunted to get into shopping centers. And I'm like, I didn't even realize there was an administrative component to running a shopping center. It didn't even cross my mind. But once you got in there, I started in the marketing end of things and really quickly worked through the system of operations and then leasing and marketing and specialty leasing, all those things that kind of happen behind the scenes. And what a wonderful career, right? I started with Calac Fairview, headhunted to market one of the shopping centers in Regina. And then I took over a couple other shopping centers with marketing and different things like that. So really a nice group of real estate that I got to oversee. Then I was asked to relocate to Victoria, and I'm like, I hadn't even been to Victoria. So
From where? Where were you?
Saskatchewan, Regina. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So lucky for me, I popped over here, bought a house in a weekend, started met all my staff. I took over 2 malls, which at the time was Victoria Eaton Centre and Tilcombe Shopping Centre. I had both of those. And then, things kind of transpired from that. I wasn't supposed to stay very long. It's 2 years was kind of my max. And then they were going to get me to move across the country, end up in Toronto. Every year we were asked to relocate. Got hard. Had young kids coming here. Yeah. And then the reality of moving from Victoria, it's like, and they regretted it. He said, oh, this is the last place we want to send people first because you never want to leave, right? So
it is tough.
It is tough. So lucky for me, but over the years, the ownership's changed. Mm-hmm. I went from Calac Fairview to LaSalle and Westcliff, and then other major players, 20 Vic and Cushman and Wakefield, and now Jones Lang LaSalle is who I work for, and Manulife actually owns the building. So I've worked for pretty much major corps my entire life. So a really, really vast portfolio mix over the years I've got to see, but people know me with attached to the Bay Centre, but there's been other properties I've managed over the years as well with these different groups. So
that's really interesting.
Really fascinating. And honestly, what you do is get to reimagine commercial property. That's basically what we're dumped into. Yeah. You're treated like an asset manager. In many cases, some of the owners treat you like it's your building, manage it, right? Tell us what we need to do. And how fun, right? So reimagining and bringing in new concepts to kind of help them grow their dream, and hopefully see them kind of grow across Canada. It's always been, kind
Yeah.
of something that exciting that can happen with each deal or conversation you have with somebody based on their dream. So that's kind of the retail experience, being able to read the business cases and see their futures, right? So
That's really interesting. And
it
through a
is
number of different owners and
for
corporations
sure.
and styles and
Yeah.
objectives
Yeah.
and I guess eras,
Oh, for sure.
through recessions, good times, all kinds of times. The pandemic, which thankfully, hopefully, we're now emerging out of. We'll talk more about that. Um, I guess, I love shopping at the Bay Center. For me, it's core to downtown. And I go over there on my lunch hour. It's perfect, and you get a whole city block of all of this stuff that maybe you don't need, but you definitely want. I'd like you to tell us about the Bay Center because you've been there, you've seen the evolution of, and you've experienced the ownership. I guess the community feels over it. So, how has it changed over the years and reflected changes in the retail landscape?
hmm Great questions. Over the years, we're 34 years old this year, 35 next year. So we opened in two phases. The first phase was Eaton's. Was phase one that opened in
Hmm.
1989, and then the second phase, which is the rest of the mall, the four Galleria levels, opened in 1990. And over the years, I mean, that will open with 103 shops, is what it was designed for. Boutique, small
Yep.
concepts with a major anchor at the end. And, I never really realized its potential because we ran into an economic downturn. I can't remember what year that was, 1980. No, that was actually 1998, I think it was, is
Yeah,
when there was a
towards the end.
bit of a
Yeah.
downturn.
Hmm.
So we missed out on getting some of those large concept stores that we really needed, and they ended up going to the street like Gap and Eddie Bauer at the time.
Hmm.
So we missed out on that. But, over the years, ebbs and flows of what worked, what didn't work. The anchors always worked, obviously.
Yeah.
And as most of you know, we've had numerous anchors, and actually
Mhm.
all three of them happened within an 18-month period, which I happened to be managing during that time, which was quite something. So we went from Eaton Center, it stayed with the name, and flipped it to Sears, and then we flipped it to the Bay.
Oh, I'd
So
forgotten about the
everyone forgets
Sears.
about the Sears. So that was a lease obligation. So we had to do that. So we were selling lawnmowers and leaf blowers in our 5-level, department store, which obviously didn't make a lot of sense in downtown Victoria at the time. So we changed that to Hudson's Bay, which was such a great win for us, and I think a big win for downtown Victoria.
Right.
And then from there, you kind of recalibrate over the years. I mean, today it's a whole different experience. I mean,
Hmm.
we opened up with boutique, then we went to large non-majors, bigger concept
Yep.
stores were really in there for a while. I bet you can remember Oconten, Tabby,
Yes.
Jacob, Esprit. I could go on, all the concepts that came and went. They all
Exactly.
start from a family that wanted to start a business in their basement, and then they grow to a big conglomerate, and we all forget about that. So
Hmm.
basically everything started from small business. So, but the ebbs and flows, we always say every 10 years you see a big switch out of merchandise mix,
Yeah.
because guess what? We as consumers change. We get older,
Hmm.
new group of folks come up, and they're now our new consumers, because as we get older, we're worrying about saving for our future,
Yep.
retirement and our kids' education. So we're not shopping anymore.
Hmm.
But so we're looking for that next group of consumers. What do they want?
For sure.
The pandemic actually expedited a lot of things that happened.
Hmm.
With retail, we were already starting to see a downturn in 2018, 2019. And, we saw that happen very quickly. We had a massive lease turnover, unfortunately, right during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Not the best of times to have that happen, but that's a reality. And
Hmm.
but I think at the end of the day, it was going to happen anyway with recalibration. I think it's kind of funny when you see a lot of the tents that you see left the building.
Hmm.
Le Chateau went bankrupt,
Yeah.
Bentley, Susie Shear, and guess what? If you came to the mall today, you would see them again. So
Yes,
what's
that's
old is new again. So
I remember seeing Susie
right?
Shear on
Yeah.
the bottom level. Yeah.
So you're starting to see a lot of those tenants come back with
Hmm.
new ownerships and new business plans of what they're doing and
Yeah.
how they're focusing. So, being a bit more cost effective, still taking some fairly major floor plates, but
Hmm.
it's changing. So, with the, we can talk about online,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and all that, what's happened over the years. We've had to, basically reimagine who we are for our
For
consumer, and our
sure.
consumers change, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
lots of boutique pop-ups, lots of, pop-up shops that we've done
Mm-hmm.
over the last, we've always done that, but I think what's happened is it became kind of our main bread and butter all of a sudden during the
Yeah.
pandemic, and people were looking to how to save my business, and pop-up shops became that for a lot of people. And Market Collective is one of our pandemic created retailers,
Yeah.
little local entrepreneurs, 3 of them, and they have 170 concepts in their store now.
I think they're
So,
fantastic
right?
how they've grown.
So,
Yeah.
and of course we always like, oh, I want to shop local,
Mm-hmm.
save the locals. But I always remind everybody, everyone started as a local at
That's right.
sometimes. So I say
Mm-hmm.
save the shops in your marketplace
Yeah.
because,
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes a marketplace better, where you want to have the national mix and you definitely want to have the local mix. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's all super important. But
Okay, that's a really good point.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we do drill home the local, but we need the mix.
Absolutely.
And you know, what I guess there's been major shifts that have happened in terms of, going through the pandemic. We'll move more and talk about the digital transformation and generational transformations. But really, there's been, I've noticed particularly since the pandemic, but there's been a whole challenge in our streetscape. And you are in the center of the downtown core. So you face challenges that maybe more suburban properties don't face. Could you talk about that a little bit and how you're looking to the future, how you're dealing with it?
hmm Yeah, you know what? One of our positioning when we're looking at new retailers is we really do talk about, streets are competition at the end of the day, but it also is necessary for us to round out the merchandise mix of what we have to offer as well as the street. So it's obviously been highlighted a lot more of late because we have 24/7 security
Yeah.
on site. I have an in-house marketing team, an operations team, which has now become a lot more valuable over the last several years. People
Hmm.
start to realize the value of that, because we're a phone call away and we can show up and assist and do what we need to do. The reality is the street issues that you've seen right across North America and internationally have been there forever, right?
Hmm.
So it definitely during the pandemic, we saw a big uptick of situations. There's been
Hmm.
laws that were changed. Bill C-75 changed June 2019.
Yep.
That changed a lot of our lives, those in retail, because the repercussions for one's actions became a little less. And, so therefore people felt that, guess what? So it's okay to shoplift for under $5,000.
Yes.
Now, don't worry about it. It's okay. And that's the perception on the street, which it's not okay, obviously,
And I've
because
heard it's quite epidemic.
it is internationally. There's obviously a lot of groups working on that, doing reviews on how we can make things better.
Hmm.
I think it's really talking to our governments to put in some of these new laws that have actually turned things around and
Hmm.
in a negative way, so that we need their help. We
Right.
definitely need them to start listening. Retailers are losing a lot of money at the
Hmm.
end of the day. If your costs are your loss is over 2%.
Mm.
It's starting to impact profit margins in a big way. And I can tell
Right.
you a lot of the big players out there are starting to see some big losses. And you and I, as the consumer that is paying, are paying for it. We're
We're
all paying
paying.
for it, right? So whether it's an insurance or, a store just decides I'm not going to
Hmm.
renew because this is not the location for me anymore. But it's not exclusive to, our region. It's definitely international.
Hmm.
And some areas you would see in the U.S. are actually closing down malls
Yes.
because of it. So I would like to think that our government is more on top of things and will listen and assist us,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
help us turn this around so it's a more balanced experience for those that obviously need the help, and then
Hmm.
those of us that are trying to make a living, right?
Right. And there's a lot of complex issues at
Oh,
play, of
huge.
course, and retailers being, right there, public, find themselves at the intersection of a lot of those issues. And I know it used to be assumed that when you were in a shopping center or whatever, that you weren't dealing with the issues, same as on the street, but it does affect you. Like you said, you've got 24/7 security
Yeah.
now. I've always felt very safe in there.
Good.
But I do know that it's put extra pressure.
It does, and and then it goes back to staffing levels at every level. I mean, we're in a massive shortage of frontline workers in
Mm.
retail as well as restaurant. Any services really is really struggling with this. So,
Hmm.
and so then there's that additional cost to make sure there's somebody watching the front door and all those
Yes.
things. So it really hurts all of us at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And I do hope there's a lot of groups working on it. Obviously, a lot of us canvassing the government or talking to your local MLAs or MPs to listen that this is a real struggle for businesses. And I think at the end of the day, we are all going to lose if we lose some of these businesses. So it's in our best interest to really pay attention to what's going on and basically how we vote, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think, you raise a good point because there may be people who think, well, gee, it's a major department store. Who's really being hurt? But ultimately, the consumers are being hurt. And let's face it, a lot of those boutiques and everything, those are not wealthy, massive corporations behind a lot of them. Sometimes their margins are fairly small.
They're
So,
all small, right?
yeah.
At the end of the day, it's tight because the cost of living has gone up. When we say it's gone up for us, it's gone up for operators and owners of businesses as well. Every time you see an increase, they see an increase.
So in terms of, we've talked about, I know San Francisco has problems, Seattle, all down sort of the Western corridor for sure, but other major cities across North America. Is there a change in thinking about people flow? Or I guess I'm thinking about how are you as the managers of the retail sectors thinking about changing to meet the conditions out there? Is there a change in philosophy in the way shopping centers are set up or how? I don't know.
Yeah, so we study and have for years sifted principles, and that's related to how you set up your store, to how
Yes.
you set up your entryways. Security will look at that. We'll hire consultants to kind of help us with that, and a lot really just comes down to that feel like you're always hyper aware of your environment, making sure you have plantings in the right places, seatings in the right places, and things like that. So yeah, there is, and the flow of traffic there's a natural way of how people
Right.
consume. We definitely study that. We understand that. We know that. And the signage, the rules, 10 feet in, don't bother with signage because nobody's reading it until
Interesting.
they're in a certain way. And
Yeah.
how you kind of lean to right away when you get into the store and stuff like that, size of signage and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't read signs. So it really comes down to the flow of how you set up your store and how you kind of get people moving through it. And what you also will see is where people put their stations for payment as well. So there's real science behind that and why you do that. But it's also about greeting the consumer the minute they hit the doorstep. Like for an example, you'll go into a higher end retail shop. They will greet you at the front door. They will watch you and help you. And then there's a reason for that, twofold, for guest customer service and guest relations. But it's also just, okay, I've recognized you, I'm paying attention, and off you go. The difference today though is that some of these consumers, there's no threat, right? So they know nothing's going to happen to them. So they really don't care about those things. So I think at the end of the day, it comes back to just, talking to the government officials that have put these bills into place and trying to get them to see it from the angle of everyone else and the repercussions of some of the actions that have created over the years or the last couple of years, what we've seen. And it's only been expedited because of the pandemic, because again, not as many people in the shops and people are a bit more desperate. And then with the rules changing, there's no consequences for their actions. So it's desperate from that
people who love, not just the Bay Center, but people who appreciate retail, want to have that there, don't want to see prices going up because of it, write letters,
absolutely
contact.
Absolutely. Like the things that are going on our streets, it's happening everywhere, and it's happening to everyone. And I think the reality is, at the end of the day, that we can guide a lot of that. Again, talking to your MPs, your MLAs, and telling them what you're not happy with and why. If you're not going to your local shop like you used to, or wherever, downtown or what have you, I think we can control that in some form or fashion. And I think, again, as taxpayers, and we get to vote. So, I think every single one of us have a voice in this arena.
So let's pay attention to it.
Absolutely.
The end,
we can all make change.
It's our city.
It absolutely is.
And we have to take an interest in this. That brings us to, the digital divide, which is not so much a divide anymore, I think is maybe a bridge. A lot of consumer behavior changed over the last, decades, especially the last 5 years, and particularly since the pandemic. And people, first out of necessity, moved to online shopping. A lot of people who never would have done it before tried it under the pandemic. Are they coming back to the in-person experience? What are you seeing?
Well, the last time I checked, it's really hard to get your toes done online and your hair done
Exactly.
and, a cosmetic procedure or,
Mm-hmm.
all those services. That's actually one thing we saw during the pandemic, that people transitioned very quickly
Mm-hmm.
into what can we do for services, and it kind of evolved really from there. I mean, online was always there. It got expedited. Some people were left behind a little bit because a lot of the not a lot, but several of the mom and pop type shops didn't have an online presence and always had it in their plan. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Well, guess what? They did it,
They do.
and some did it very well. Some did not. But
Mhm.
and again, multiple things were happening at the same time. The big companies were like, "Ooh, we need a better management system of our merchandise, and how much needs to go here, how much needs to go there."
Mhm.
So, systems, iClouds, systems like that for your inventory stock was put into place fairly quickly, especially if you have national tenants across the board.
Mhm.
You need to be able to move that merchandise fast, be it online or in store. And I think what it was, it's a happy marry between the two, quite
Mhm.
frankly. So I think the two are very necessary. If you can't find something in your local marketplace, you'll go online, and most of us, Canadians, actually most Canadians will go online first to do
Mhm.
research now before they go out to shop. So they're very educated before they even get into the shops.
Right.
So that's changed quite a bit. Before, you used to go to the shop to get the education, and then
Mhm.
shop the city.
Mhm.
So a little bit different. It's made us probably a little bit more efficient in our shopping as well.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding is now that we're a few years in. I mean, you can shop anywhere. We all have a computer in our hand, like, right,
That's right.
24/7. So the difference is what you're going to offer in store, and what some of the most brilliant retailers have done is that they've got online specials only.
Yeah.
And then what I noticed during the summer months, inline discounts only.
Mhm.
Like, so Hudson's Bay, for example, I think did a pretty good job of that. So you can go in and get up to 75% off during the end of the summer sale. You couldn't necessarily get that all online. So
That's right.
and there was, so you almost had to go in there,
Yeah.
right? So that was pretty exciting to see that. And again, other retailers have
Mhm.
gotten pretty smart about how they do it. So, Blue Barn, albeit not a online, but you can buy packages online to get your blowouts every day. So you're going to have some kind of guarantee income coming in. So you kind of set that up. But I think it's honestly, I think it's just we lucked out. We actually have a way better system now of consuming. Again, at the end of the day, as far as bricks and mortar go, is it still alive? Of course it is.
Yeah.
Look at Winners, for example. They don't have an online presence. That is not their world.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely not. I was surprised, but their inventory changes so
it
fast,
changes
doesn't
so fast. Like, you can't think about it. You
Mhm.
know how you go, oh, I'll come back and look again.
Yep.
Come back and look again.
Yep.
Dang, I missed it. So that's the whole excitement
Mhm.
about shopping at Winners
Mhm.
at the end of the day. And that was such a good addition for us. And
Exactly.
actually, just during the beginning of the pandemic, or just before, 2 levels in the Bay Center. And again, it kind of adds all that merchandise, makes it one shop, just like Hudson's Bay, but different.
Exactly.
Right? So
Yeah.
anyway.
It's I mean, it's fascinating. And then what about artificial, I don't know if how
Artificial
it's affecting
intelligence?
the retailers you work with, but it's definitely
Absolutely.
coming for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it already, and we had been for years. You just didn't know it. So these chatbots that pop up, and the
Yep.
information that comes to you, you're like, oh, that's funny. I was looking for a dress for a wedding. How did it know that, right? So,
Mhm.
some people hate that, some people love it, but I would say it's actually a tool.
Yep.
It helps you, kind of drives the information that you need. It saves time.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of retailers do it very well, whether it's, on your cell phones or everywhere. So we know where you're going, so you can get that
Mhm.
information and feed that information directly to you. So, and then of course, I'm all about AI, because at the end of the day, I've been saying this for years before it even was a thing, that I said, there's certain jobs that it's like, okay, your washrooms that way, this that way,
Yep.
AI can actually take care of that. You still need your guest relations at the end of the day and guest service folks for that personalization, but you also, for the mundane, directional type stuff or basic services, like you've seen it in a lot of restaurants lately, put your plates on the what is it, the little robots plate. I think there was greeters at one of the airlines. They were using them as well. Don't get to the gate, stuff like that. So very basic stuff that they're doing. And honestly, I suspect it's our future because frontline jobs are really hard to fill, and so that it's super necessary to actually have it. So it's another complement to your staffing, if you will.
Well, that was another question I wanted to ask you when we talk about, the problems in hiring. I know it's been tough for, restaurants, retailers who need people there on the front lines. Is it improving? How do you see it, the hiring situation playing out?
I no, it's not improving. I actually was just meeting with some folks today. It's, again, right across the board, the entry level, the cost of living in our city is high for those entry level positions. So if you don't already have housing or living with family members or something like that, or if it's just a complementary position, to your wages or your lifestyle, it's tough, right? So, and that's why, things like this, looking at how to do things better, how to computerize and put your stock online so you can actually take care of it from anywhere. Many building systems in our building is all online, so we don't actually have to have a person at the mall for certain things. So we can tap in online and just do this, and that's just obviously efficiencies at the end of the day. So no, it's not getting better, but I think at the end of the day, those that are in the business will stay in the business. We just need to help attract them, right? And make sure that they understand that being in retail or the restaurant business, it's a career. It's an opportunity, and there's definitely some very good paying positions as well.
And I do know people in retail who love retail. They are passionate about it. They started out maybe, as a store clerk, and now they've worked their way to manager.
Right.
And we do need more housing. We absolutely need that. And I know that everybody is putting a lot of focus on that, and hopefully we'll come up with some solutions in the shorter term, and not waiting years and years for solutions.
Absolutely.
I'm very interested in consumer behavior, and I was reading a report by the Retail Council of Canada that talked about how consumers are changing. Now, I'm Gen X. Shopping is my therapy. In-person shopping is my therapy, but I know it's not that way for everyone. But one of the interesting things they said was consumers are taking a measure twice, cut once approach to shopping, forcing retailers in almost all formats to adjust to a more discerning dollar-wise consumer, making considerate decisions. How's that playing out locally, and would you even agree with that?
Well, you know what? I look at the different demographics in my house. There's 4 of us, 4 different demographics as well. So I find it interesting. So I'm an X as well. My youngest daughter is a Z, so everything is on TikTok for her. She does her research on there and makes decisions. She definitely shops online. But at the end of the day, a lot of these generations, whether it's millennial or X, are living in smaller homes, and they need to get out to socialize. So, you see the boardroom cafe, you're like, how's that ever going to make it, right?
Yeah.
But it does, because it makes sense, especially those that are living in 500 square feet or smaller in the downtown. Our the shopping center, the parks are their playground, right? So they're going to come in and experience what there is to experience. And you can buy clothing online, you can even buy shoes online and makeup, but a lot of people still want to experience that in store and get that, facial redone, or
That's right.
You still can't get a haircut online. So, all those services, and that's what I've seen during the pandemic, a huge resurgence of services. Restaurants, and we have 18 eateries in our Bay Center alone, right? So
yes,
so you kind of look at what's hot, what's not. I mean, we focus fairly heavily on tourists as well, and they're for the widgets and the little take-home gift, but also the food and the experience that way. And same as with, those folks that live and play downtown, and the younger groups, the millennials, and that they definitely like to get out of the, and get together with other folks and get the latest and greatest.
I mean, that's part of their living room out there.
Well, it really is. And then the other thing is too, I mean, yes, you can plan to buy something online and that dress shows up and it doesn't fit, whatever. And now my event is tonight. So guess what? They're going to race to the mall and they're going to, quickly shop it. And we do see that quite often. And I guess the resurgence of events made that happen as well. It's like, it happened faster than you could actually shop online. So yeah, you can get some things fairly quickly, but you know, we all find out it doesn't fit exactly how it looked online or the color's off. And again, I think that's why, obviously bricks and mortar is always going to be there. It's just the differentiating is, the experience at the end of the day. Can we, provide a better experience of what you're getting online? So
that's really interesting. I like that. And, I heard, having been around a few generation Zers myself, or Yers, they want, maybe the online shopping experience is such that when they go into stores, they're not even expecting somehow the same level of service. They seem to be very independent as they move around.
They've done their research already.
Yeah.
Again, TikTok has taken over the world on how to do everything, right? So, we're all on there a little bit just to kind of see what's going on. I mean, I laughed. We just dropped a promotion for fall for back to school with the Bay Center as well, and go online and kind of show it. So it kind of gives you those ideas, and it was already on social media in different forms and fashions, but I think it's just faster to you. TikTok shows the everyday person, look at what I have, and this is how you can implement it into your wardrobe and stuff like that. So I think it's very relevant, and I think honestly, well, I'm not I'm an Xer, so I still go online and I do my research online before I hit the streets. So if I know I can't find it in the city, sure, you're going to go online. But I do my research online to obviously support the folks that are here for us every day, and and hopefully they'll stay.
Yes, exactly. And part of, I know what consumers and retailers have been struggling with a little bit is supply chain problems. And what is the state of that? What are you hearing? It's been for a long time. I mean, people would walk into stores and say, well, they don't have anything, or when are they getting their fall clothes, or late this year, or whatever. But what's going on in retail?
That was tough. Obviously, during the pandemic, it's like, oh, great, they got their summer stuff. It's fall. So, I mean, nobody controlled that.
No.
That was so out of everyone's control. I feel it's leveled off now, and you're starting to see a real, system, back in place again.
Right.
You could go into Costco, unfortunately, and get your Christmas decorations now. But, but typical, like Hudson's Bay, obviously that's not there yet. But you're finding that the fall fashions came in on time. Like mid-August, you started to see them.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels too early, but that's fairly typical because you're getting ready for back to school, back to work, I hope. I encourage those that work outside the home to continue to work outside the home.
Yes, yes.
Because you want to get on the latest fashion. But definitely, I find it has really got back to some kind of normal that feels good, and people aren't keeping stock now that they were during the pandemic.
No, that's been great. And inflation might be easing off, maybe not in the food sector so much, but did that have a big impact at all?
You know what, it hasn't so far. We really haven't seen anything. I think what you're going to see is the outcome of those that have mortgages and that if they're coming up in the next year and that. I think we're definitely going to see a settling in. I know people are saying back to school shopping was more expensive. What are you planning on spending for Christmas is already out there for discussion. So definitely there's some things like that. What I have seen though, and you can tell that people are kind of preparing for that, is a resurgence of some of the economical brands that are being brought into stores, and definitely those sections are moving, closer to the front of the store. You look at dollar stores are really turned into grocery stores now.
Yes, I've heard that.
So it's when you look at that, it's because of what's going on in the economy. Groceries are expensive, so now you're going to look at, do I need fresh bread, or can I use day 2 old
Right.
bread, right? So, and I think that there's a place for that, and I think a lot of people in that mid-range salary and raising a family are going to turn to those types of retailers. And then even Hudson's Bay, for example, they have the resurgence of Zellers, which is known for its everyday
Very
low prices,
interesting.
right? So, I don't know if you had an opportunity to go there, but
I did.
it's a bit exciting because
Yeah.
everyone says for the nostalgia. I don't remember shopping there really as a child, but I go in there and I'm like, this feels like IKEA. It's got great dishes and toys for kids and actually clothing for kids.
Yeah.
And house and home. So if you're just starting out, and I noticed actually the uptick of traffic for those setting up their homes. Students coming into town.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you see parents walking out with a big basket full of
Exactly.
dishes and stuff. So I'm like, okay, they're here,
To me,
they're
it
back.
it kind of offered a little more of that Target experience that, of course, was tried out
Come and
here and
gone?
really
Yeah.
didn't succeed.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to you have observed so much over various eras of retail, and you're still so young.
Right.
But what advice based on that, to succeed, what do retailers need to hear, local retailers need to hear from you?
Well, you know what? I think what I've seen over the years is a lot of people didn't actually create a decent business plan, right? So really
Interesting.
think it out. They usually say, "What's the rent?" And it's like, well, what's your merchandise mix? What are you trying to focus on? Who are you focusing on? What's your demographic, and what do you think your sales are going to be? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that. So I think creating that business plan, making sure part of your business plan, depending on what it is, it honestly doesn't even matter whether it's widgets or services. They should have a solid
Yeah.
website. That is still super important, and having a social media presence in some form or fashion, because again, most of us, and I would say the greatest percentage of consumers, review online before they head out to that restaurant or, looking for a new hairdresser. And, at one point we used to really value the opinion of folks at influencers and stuff like that. And in fact, that's even losing some of the faith,
Notice
because,
that.
we know that, it's actually more common. We all know they're being paid to tell us what's great and what's not. So now it's actually more looking at your home base, your team, if you will, of people that you hang out with, coworkers and friends. Where are you shopping? What are you doing? Where'd you get that from? That's actually becoming a lot more important, and paying attention to that. So find the niche, go after it, and and I always think create a business for scale. Most don't, and I always find that interesting. But a lot of people like to open up a little shop and keep it just that. Totally fine. But know that, right? That's what you're focused on. But pop-up shops has really allowed a lot of like a lot of entrepreneurs to kind of do that. Well, let's try it.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to reach out and do that, because
I
that's
love
actually where the
that.
next new entrepreneurs are coming from.
Yeah.
And you look at, like I said, we don't have 103 retailers and services anymore, but if I really counted how many businesses are in some of our businesses, it's actually exponential.
Yeah.
So you look at the pop-up shops that are happening in Hudson's Bay now, like so they have ever new clothing. Like I've been,
which I love.
I'd love to have a shop in the mall, but they're trialing it as a store in Hudson's Bay. Fantastic. So you're seeing a lot more of that. So I think, again, just don't be frightened. Just get out there and call and talk to one of us in the industry, and let's help you start your next new career.
That's really interesting. And you and I have talked before about Hudson's Bay, and as I've told you, I love department stores. I mean, you give me a great department store and I'm super happy. So you don't see, you see the Bay continuing to innovate and, really putting forward, having a strong future.
Yeah, you know what? Because again, they look at their stores as real estate, like a shopping center, actually. So you start to see a lot of shops in there, and rounding out, so they had Coach in there. They have Sunglass Hut is in there, which is also in the Bay side. And, and I look at, some of the right sizing of some of the retailers over the last several years. really kind of assessing where their real estate needs to be. And so what they're doing is, so for example, L'Occitane isn't in our mall anymore, but they actually have their product in Hudson's Bay.
Ooh, didn't realize.
Not my favorite thing to say out loud, but but the product's still in the mall then, right?
Exactly.
So Club Monaco left several years ago. You can actually buy
In the
that
Bay.
product in the Bay. Mango, which is another mid to high end dress shop. I love it. I'd love to get a store. They've got their lines in there too. So, Olsen Europe and, all those are carrying lines within there. So it's, shops within shops. So that's, to me, kind of just like a shopping center, recreating the merchandise mix and creating a better draw, right? And again, I think the Zellers, everyone's kind of up in the air on what's going to happen with Zellers. Time will tell, but I was pleasantly surprised. I don't really need anything, and I ended up buying stuff from there, right? So, it's like, oh, I want that Trevet or, new dishes and, for 1 or 2 time use, and then I'll sell it if I have to. But cheaper than renting, actually, some of it. So it's kind of like,
For sure.
then why wouldn't you, right? So I think they're evolving just like all of us, right? Kind of looking at what's the consumer today want. They're looking for more services. They're looking for experiences. We have Quasars as a pop-up in the middle of our mall right now.
Yeah.
That, who that's, it's mail. I walk through the mall and I'm like, I've never seen so many mails in our mall today when I cut through at lunchtime.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, so it's kind of a nice break from, those that have, are working, have chose to take a lunch break, grab their bag lunch or headed over to the new Boardwalk burger shop that just opened in the Bay Center this weekend. And, spend half an hour at Quasars in the middle of the mall. So
see, that's fun.
It slows down traffic. It makes people kind of experience something. And then as they're looking around, then they go, wait, I didn't know that Purdy's was there. I'm going to go buy some Purdy's and take it back.
And that's one thing I know about you is that you've always had this entrepreneurial outlook in seeing the possibilities. And the Bay Center in particular, I've been to film festival things there. I've been to Christmas things. I've been to fashion shows. I've noted Quasars. You've always got something going on and you always seem to be thinking on your feet. And it can be easy in an environment that changes so fast. But that's really, really, I think, a hallmark of your career and what you've been doing. And this is not an ad for the Bay Center, by the way. We're here for all retailers today, but really, I think that the Bay Center exemplifies quite a few things that go right in retail.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think we're all doing it really at the end of the day. Pop-up shops, we had been doing it all along, but I think what you're seeing now is right across the board. Everyone's doing it, putting in some of those new experiential offerings. And there's a pop-up in Mayfair, for example, and it's a kids' play center.
Yes.
Right? So, that's really focusing on their core consumer, which is a family consumer.
That's right.
That makes sense for them. So, and those little ride-on what are they? I don't know. Little ride-on,
the little
kid
fuzzy
things.
ride-on.
Yeah, it's funny because they reach out to us all the time. Like, no, wrong mall. We're 4 levels, but Mayfair for sure. That makes a lot of sense, right?
Exactly.
So totally agree with that.
So let's look into your crystal ball here. Emerging trends beyond what we've talked about. Is there anything major or really innovative you're seeing coming up? What are you predicting over the next sort of 5 years that we're going to start seeing more of?
Well, again, the pandemic really shifted things around. Like I look at the exterior of our mall, I couldn't lease up that space to save ourselves. And during the pandemic, it was just like, didn't have enough of it, right?
Yeah.
So, the services kind of opened up, Blow Bar and Central Barbers and cannabis shops, right?
Yes.
So who would have thunk? Definitely 15 years ago, we would never have thought that this was going to happen, or 30 years ago, for sure not.
Imagine the old Eaton Center thing. We'd have people clutching their pearls.
Oh, right. So we came from, 30 years ago where you look forward to getting your Sears Christmas catalog so you could sit down and, remember and like, I need this piano. I need this, like, remember all the aspirational products they had in there. So today you don't do that. You sit down with your kids and you're going through Instagram or, whatever. So it's really that ebbs and flows, and magazines are still really important. You look at Yam magazine, for example.
Sure.
I look forward to that at Christmas time. It's like, ooh, what's coming out, right? So I think there's a nice mix between everything, being it online and in person. And I think what you're going to see is services continue to be extremely important.
Yeah.
I mentioned the other day to somebody like life sciences and entertainment and all these different things because we need to reinvent ourselves. We need to reimagine ourselves. And shopping centers have to do that pretty much every 10 years. You have to kind of recalibrate and look at things. Our leases generally turn over every 5. That changed drastically during the pandemic. They're changing over every year.
Wow.
So leases became much shorter. But your anchors are your anchor, right? So you're hoping that they continue to evolve. I think the Bay is in good shape when you look at things like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's just paying attention to your consumer and focusing on the uniqueness of your marketplace and your consumer, who I said changes literally every 10 years. You can see a real change in the consumer. Like I said, today, would you wear a tabby clothing? Probably not, right? So therefore, it doesn't exist. But Le Chateau, you probably would walk in there and probably buy something where you thought that's probably for somebody younger than me, but it's not, right?
No.
So, retailers are evolving themselves and a lot of them are making products that last longer. I think what you're also seeing is the newfound pop-up shops with secondhand clothes. So those are super popular. And again, Hudson's Bay has even popped into that. So you can see some online, very high-end clothing on there. It's secondhand,
I noticed
use, right?
that. I was actually quite surprised.
So was I. And I
and
noticed that during
pleasantly.
the pandemic. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's looking at sustainability and really focused on that too. So I mean, that goes hands in hand when you look at, unique, and then products that are actually good for the environment, good for you. So I think the consumer is not so much into, I need more. It's about consuming more thoughtfully. So I think that's really
And that's got to be a good
future,
thing.
for sure.
It's got to be a good thing. Well, Darlene, thank you so much for being here today. Darlene Hollstein, General Manager of the Bay Center in downtown Victoria. It's really been a pleasure discussing this with you. It's one of my favorite topics, shopping. And thank you to our listeners. You can tune in to the Rising Economy podcast on Chet's Podcast Network or anywhere you tune into your favorite podcasts, including Spotify. Finally, our Rising Economy podcasts are our way of keeping important conversations about our economy going all year, leading up to our 4th annual Rising Economy Conference coming up March 6th to 8th, 2024 in Victoria, and virtually. You can find out more at ourrisingeconomy.ca. Thanks, Darlene. Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by South Island Prosperity Partnership. Learn more at southislandprosperity.ca.